Immigration has always been one of Trump's major policies, but for the first part of his term, for the first year, he's been mainly focused on illegal immigration. You've seen this with the massive ramp up in ICE raids and ICE arresting a whole bunch of people and deporting them. And he has not really addressed the legal immigration. In fact, previously this year, he defended in a lot of ways the HB1 visas for high-skilled immigrant workers. So, in fact, he's defended legal immigration in a lot of ways. But he seems to be changing that tune. As Trump administration is to suspend illegal immigrant visas for nationals of 75 countries. That's a lot of countries. In fact, there's only 180 to 190 countries. There's a lot of debate on this simply in the international community, since a lot of breakaway regions of certain countries aren't recognized by a lot of places. You see that with Kosovo, you see it with Somaliland, and even Morocco and other places like that. So an estimated around 180 to 190, a little bit more than that maybe, countries in the world. And 75 of those countries, that's a large portion of the countries in the world. And so he's now cracking down a lot on legal immigration. So let's actually read the article for what he's planning to do and why he's doing it. So the Trump administration announced Wednesday that it will stop giving out visas to nationals of dozens of countries who are seeking to move to the U.S. permanently, escalating its broad crackdown on legal immigration. The State Department, which oversees the visa processing at the U.S. embassies and consulates, said that it would indefinitely pause issuance of immigrant visas requested by by citizens of 75 countries, halting legal immigration channels for roughly 38% of all nations. That's over a third of all nations. That's, again, I mentioned that 75 countries is a lot, and it's almost close to 50, but around 40%, 2/5. So that's a large portion of the countries in the world. Now, I assume a lot of these are smaller ones, but there's probably some big ones too there. Officials said the pause would apply to immigrant visas, meaning those requested by people abroad who have been sponsored by American relatives or employers to move to the U.S. permanently. The suspension, the official said, does not affect temporary visas requested by would-be tourists and travelers seeking to come to the U.S. on a short-term basis. So it's basically trying to block a lot of the family visas, like family sponsoring. You get one person to come to the U.S. either through H-1B visa or other visa programs, and then them basically asking for spouses and other people to come to the U.S. simply because they're related. Additionally, it said corporations. Honestly, I don't love that it's also blocking corporations because those people seem to be are employable, and I would love for this country to brain drain a whole bunch of other countries. We did this in World War II. After World War II, when we took over the Western Germany, we ended up brain draining a lot of their rocket scientists. They ended up helping work on the Manhattan Project. No, not Manhattan Project. Actually, yeah, Manhattan Project's part of that because at that time, we captured Germany before Japan, so part of them worked on that. They also worked on our missile programs, the Apollo missions, and a whole bunch of other science-related stuff in Germany, from the German scientists in the U.S. So I love to brain drain. It's good for long-term science, particularly within our own nation. So I'm not great enjoying that they would ban from countries that ban people from countries that are actually help the U.S. in a lot of ways and are actually having a job. But at least it's a start to actually ban immigration. Next. So let's continue reading. Officials said the pause would apply to immigrant visas, meaning those requested by... Oh, I already read that. Another thing I thought about this is the fact that it wouldn't be banning tourists, so it actually wouldn't affect the World Cup, since that's coming up soon. So it wouldn't affect people coming over for tourism for the World Cup, and it won't affect the amount of money coming from foreign countries into the U.S. from that tourism. So that's also good. The State Department said 75 countries were chosen as a part of an effort to bar entry to immigrants who were likely to rely on public assistance once in the U.S. Once in the U.S., officials said that they would examine immigration procedures during the pause to better identify and bar would-be immigrants from those countries that were likely to become a public charge or an economic burden on the U.S. I think that's good. Trying to stop illegal immigrants, legal immigrants, not illegal, but legal immigrants that are going to be a burden on the U.S. is a is a good thing, because we as Americans do not want to be funding someone else from a foreign country just to come over here and live off of the benefits of the United States. Currently, we already have a massive issue with fraud in the United States. You have the Somali fraud, but we also, and that was mainly an immigrant community, and we also have other issues with other immigrants being on the systems itself too. Even though it might not be fraudulent, those people are still a net negative on the taxpayer. So we don't want that economic burden. But again, I would like to mention that it's targeting broadly. It's not targeting specific people and whether they will be able to actually do this. And that's my major critique of this move at this point. The State Department will pause immigrant visas processing from 75 countries whose migrants take welfare from the American people at unacceptable rates. The department said said Wednesday. The freeze will remain active until the U.S. can ensure new immigrants will not extract wealth from the American people. The State Department did not formally publish the list of 75 affected nations, but said Somalia, Haiti, Iran, and Eritrea are among them. A list first reported by Fox News confirmed by the State Department to CBS News includes countries like Brazil, Colombia, Egypt, Guatemala, Pakistan, and Senegal. The list, so basically, they're just going over the list at this point. So this is the list. I will skip reading that list for now since that's a long list, but we'll come back to it. Because it'll take a long to go over that list, and also I have a point with it in comparing it to like GDP per capita. So let's continue skipping that. The pause on illegal on immigrant visas is set to take effect next week on January 21st, according to U.S. official and congressional official briefed on the move. Long-standing federal law bars immigrants from coming to the U.S. Or getting lawful permanent residency if they deem to become a public charge. Historically, the restriction has been applied in limited cases, such as when illegal immigrants require long-term institutional care in the United States. So even though it's a law in the books, it hasn't really been enforced in any ways. That's simply because, one, it's a lot of these Democrat administration, mainly the Biden administration, and also the Obama administration, tend to be in support of legal immigration, and they want as many migrants coming into the U.S. You saw this with the fact that Biden brought in millions upon millions of immigrants, and over 10 million of them were actually illegal. So, and there were many, many more that were actually legal. So, this has not been enforced. It has pretty much never been enforced, and when it is, it's only in moments where it's actually an extreme amount of money is being spent, like becoming like with long-term institutionalized people in long-term institutionalized care. So it's not really been enforced, and actually Trump doing this is actually good. And even though I have my critiques on it, it's at least a good start on actually enforcing the rules of the immigration system. But dating back to President Trump's first administration, his aides have sought to dramatically expand who can be considered ineligible to immigrate to the U.S. on public charge grounds. While the Trump administration has launched a highly visible crackdown on illegal immigrants immigration across the U.S., has simultaneously issued a series of policies to sharply restrict legal immigration with less fanfare. The latest version of Mr. Trump's travel ban proclamation, for example, fully bans or restricts immigration and travel from 39 countries, most of them in Asia and Africa. His administration has also frozen refugee admissions, except for a few groups, mainly Afrikaners in South Africa. So he's actually starting to crack down on legal immigration too, and this is a good move just simply because you do not want people coming to the United States that are going to be basically taking government benefits and being a net negative to the overall state of the United States. So, in my opinion, this is overall a good move, but I actually have a couple critiques about this policy and a couple arguments that I feel are actually pretty valid, and that, in my opinion, has led this policy in particular, banning 75 countries, to be not very good. So the one I mentioned previously in the video is that a lot of these countries still have people in them that will not be net negatives. So in my opinion, what the policy should be in these cases is that you actually have some sort of requirement from the State Department or that they cannot be receiving welfare benefits, and making sure you have to track that. So basically say you can't have Medicare and Medicaid, you can't have Social Security, you can't do unemployment benefits, you can't do all these benefits. In my opinion, finding a way to actually implement that would be more successful, because then you're actually still allowing immigrants that would be beneficial to the United States into the United States, while still banning other countries, for other people that are in those countries from taking welfare benefits. The question is, how do you do that? And I said, basically making it so they can't be on the benefits. I think that's the most basic and reasonable one. Not being on the benefits. If you take any benefits, you get removed from the United States, you're breaking the law, and get deported. Simple as that. Because at that point, if you're on the benefits, then you're being a net negative to the United States. Now, there is an argument saying that illegal immigrants should be receiving some benefits. For example, let's say they've been in the United States for legal immigrants in the United States have been in the U.S. for how many years? Let's say 10 years. They've been in the 10 years. They've been a net positive to the United States. They've had a job. They continue to make money with that job. But then let's say they get laid off or have to quit for some reason. And because of that lapse in employment, they have to take like unemployment benefits for a small amount of time. But then after they get off those benefits, then they'll be able to, and they're actively searching for a job, then they'll be able to continue to support the U.S. and actually benefit the U.S. overall. And that, I think, is a reasonable argument. So the question is, how would you enforce that, though? Because you would have to do it in a way to where you can say, if you're on unemployment benefits for so long, then you don't get the benefits at all. And then you're deported. That could work. Like saying, but also have it be like a smaller time frame in terms of like U.S. Citizens having unemployment benefits. So you could say like you receive, if you don't get a job and you're still on unemployment benefits after, I don't know how long, 2 to 3 months, 2 months, then you get deported. And I think that's a good option. And that might actually solve that issue of making sure that the people are still in here even though they might have a small lapse in income, but they're still a net beneficiary. So maybe small unemployment benefits would be really a good way. But besides that, I don't really think that any benefits should be going to immigrants at all, because they're coming to the United States And we need them to be a net positive. We don't want them to be a net negative to the American taxpayer and the American citizens that were born here. So I think the small unemployment benefits might be the only benefits. But besides that, legal immigrants should not be receiving any benefits overall. So overall plan for here would be to still allow people to come in from these nations as long as they've. And also another thing I just realized, there would also be an issue with having them, like, when they get here to begin with, how long does it take for them to actually be a net positive on the United States? And that's where we could have, like, corporate requirements and requirements to have, like, a job already set up for you when you come into the country. That would be how you do that. But let's go back to what I was saying earlier. So overall plan, in my opinion, that would be better than this, instead of just banning everyone from these countries. If first, they have to be a net positive on the United States. So they have to have a job set up. And it has to be a job to where they're gaining enough income yearly to where they wouldn't be on any benefits and they don't have. So maybe right around the median, or maybe higher than the median income. Actually, probably way higher than the median income. I don't know the exact number amount, but higher than the median income, and has to be able to sustain themselves without being on any benefits at all. Next, make sure that they don't have any benefits and they can't have access to any benefits. That would be a great way. No access to benefits. Then that means that they are pretty much guaranteed to not be able to take money from outside the system that's actually supposed to go to actual Americans and immigrants and people that were born here, not immigrants. And if they do actually violate that rule and they actually try to get benefits from anything other than unemployment, they end up getting deported and removed from the country. And the third one, that unemployment that I discussed about, basically saying so they have short-term relief if they do go through losing their job. But again, it's going to be smaller than the normal unemployment benefits. Another critique, that's the overall plan right now, and that's what I think is better, simply for those reasons. But also another issue I have with this particular plan from Donald Trump, banning from 75 countries, is that these 75 countries, I don't think all of them are the lowest in terms of GDP per capita, and most likely to be the ones that are taking money out of the American system and take money from the taxpayer. So let's actually look at this list here. So this is the list of the countries with the lowest GDP per capita, and this is what you usually use to measure income. So let's look at this list. South Sudan, on there. Yemen, on there. Afghanistan, on there. But Burundi, not on there. See, not on there. And that's the countries with B's. Central African Republic, not on there. Madagascar, not on there. Malawi, not on there. So those are just lists, and those are just at the bottom. Obviously, North Korea is not going to be on there because they're already banned. But they're not on there. Eritrea, I think that was mentioned earlier, but earlier in the list for countries that were off of it. In fact, up here, I believe. Was it up here? Yeah, Eritrea. So that's been removed. Mozambique, not on there. Sudan, not on there. There's actually no, South Sudan is on there. But there's a lot of countries on here that have a lower income and are even more likely to be on benefits in the United States. They haven't been removed from the list of countries. Additionally, there's some wealthy nations on here too. It was mentioned that there was Brazil. Brazil's on here, and that country's pretty rich. There's Thailand, even though they're not super rich, still have a good economic standing, a lot better than a lot of these other countries. So let's see, where's Brazil? Brazil. I think I probably missed it already. 1 second, let's order it. But Brazil was removed from the list. Egypt was removed from the list. And those countries are still pretty wealthy. And why would they be removed from the list while... Well, Brazil's not extremely wealthy. They're still a lot better than, like, Bolivia, Bhutan, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Botswana. And I don't think a lot of those people, those countries were on the list. No, they weren't. They weren't. So, it's not really an effective list, in my opinion. It's not effective at all. There's countries that are clearly more wealthy and have wealthier people in them that could actually benefit the United States, and they're on the list. Now, why do I think he probably put them on the list? I think it's probably multiple factors. Political factors, probably one. Second is probably maybe national security or trying to pressure certain nations. That could be it. But I don't think that's enough to justify just having a lot of these lower income nations that still that have even larger problems in comparison to a country like Brazil. So it's not really an issue it's not really a good system, in my opinion, to just exclude a lot of these nations and then having other areas and other nations that have lower income, lower living standards, and even more likely to be on benefits to allow those people in. It's to ban indiscriminately a country like Brazil that's even wealthier. So I think that's not run very well in Trump's case. He might have a reason for not banning the smaller nations. It might be simply too hard to track them, but I don't think that's the case. But yeah, I don't think it's really good to indiscriminately ban those. But at least he's trying to do something. At least he's trying to do something here, and it's actually probably going to decrease people that are actually taking benefits from the U.S. system. Well, not decrease, but it's going to stop an increase of the people that are wanting into the United States and coming in legally that are basically robbing the American system. So that's at least something good from this, even though I don't think it's the best way. I kept mentioning earlier that I think the better way is to have that system that I mentioned earlier, which is to require a job to already be set up for the person. They already have to have a job from like a company that's in the U.S. that pays enough for them to live off of them. Then one that would also, another thing would be no benefits except for maybe short-term unemployment. Again, but it's going to be less than that. And then the other, I kept mentioning, it also mentions that short-term unemployment would probably be the only benefit that would be allowed to this group. In my opinion, that would be a better system than the system that doesn't seem entirely well thought out. But what does everyone else think? Do you guys think of another idea for this? Do you guys think of anything creative, different ways or whatever? And if you do, please tell me down in the comments. I'll read your comments, maybe take them into consideration, and maybe adopt your ideas. But anyways, like, comment, subscribe, share this with someone else you know, and I will see you all next time.